everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. I'm here with Jessica. How are you doing, Jessica?
I'm always good.
So to start off the show, I just want you to provide a brief introduction of yourself. I have known you for some years now. We used to work together at MakingChips. So you're still with MakingChips. Let us know what you're doing and what's new with MakingChips.
Yeah, so I'd argue that MakingChips is probably my first branch into manufacturing. I did work at Greenlee Textron for a while when I was just getting started in my career, which gave me a little bit of insight, but definitely not to the same level that MakingChips has. So my background is actually in marketing, software, web development, and design. I've touched base in a lot of different things throughout my career. I got started, like I said, my first professional job was actually with Greenlee Textron, and then I moved into the agency life, which brought me to MakingChips. It's 2 years already, which I cannot believe, but it sort of bridged what we both needed at the same time. They were just moving from just being the podcast to also starting their agency, and I was looking for an agency with tons of room for growth where I could really do what I do best, which is content marketing, great design, and user experience. Those are really my buckets. So that's 2 years ago now with MakingChips, which is insane.
So to touch on MakingChips, the podcast, because you mentioned that, for anyone that's tuning in right now, MakingChips started out as a podcast with two hosts, Jason Zinger and Jim Carr, and then Nick Gollner brought in the whole marketing stuff, and he was the marketing director for Advanced Machine Engineering in Rockford, Illinois. So a lot of plugs there, but they created this great marketing agency because marketing for manufacturing is a huge thing. It continues to grow, and it's definitely something that manufacturers are looking more and more into. And that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about today is marketing for manufacturing. So let's get into this conversation of Agile and Scrum. That was something that we all had to read books on and become familiar with. So let's hear from you what Agile and Scrum are and how MakingChips is actually incorporating that into some of the things that they're doing for some of their manufacturing clients.
Yeah, so Agile is sort of, I'm not going to say it's a system because it's not. It's very modular in that way. It's more of a philosophy behind project management. It was originally started in the software space, so it was primarily used by developers. However, manufacturers found it really relatable because of things that have been implemented like EOS and Lean, which are very popular in the manufacturing spaces. So we were just becoming an agency. All three of the partners felt very strongly around Agile, and they were like, we think this makes sense because it translates project management within marketing into something that we can understand. And we said, okay, let's touch base. And I remember you were here at the time, and I'd say that you probably did most of the original, getting in there and learning what it was. And so I just sort of rode your coattails on that one, and then became an ICP Agile guide. Agile, like I said, is sort of more of a philosophy than an actual system because there's so many pieces and things that go on with it. Some of the popular ones, which you've probably heard of, are Scrum and Kanban. And so people are very familiar with those, or they've at least heard the terms within project management. But ultimately, we decided on Agile because it was a great translated system that allowed smaller increments of project and workflows to go through at one time. So that we were able to sort of see this large backlog and make it manageable, which is really what Agile is all about. It's about creating a system and things in place, and that's where that ideology comes in of like, okay, we want to have continuous learning, continuous improvement, and continuous growth. So here's the smaller increments we can do things in, and then evaluate during those time periods. So, I mean, you were here when that was happening.
And I think it fits in well, too, with how manufacturing is growing today, because there's so many new innovations happening. And then especially with like the COVID pandemic, a lot of manufacturers had to adapt to how they were handling some of their in-office operations and even their out of like the shop floor operations. So it really helps teams focus on their priorities and allows each team member from those teams take accountability for what they're responsible for. So instead of like not, if there's like an issue or a challenge that comes about, it really helps team members say, hey, I'm kind of falling behind on this. I need to prioritize. I need help with this. So if one team member is done with all of their tasks, it allows them to rearrange things and increase the flexibility of a team as well too. So you get more things done in smaller amounts of time. And I didn't believe that it was possible, but it is possible. I think we did a really good job while I was there, getting more things done and focusing on those priorities. So it's really good for that. And I recommend anyone who is in manufacturing, if you haven't already, I'm pretty sure most people in manufacturing have, but read any of those books on Agile, Kanban, EOS. They're really good resources.
And I've definitely got some starter books that I can sort of throw at you to provide to your audience that I absolutely love. One of the best ones that I've read is Hacking Marketing. However, Andrea Fryer, who actually runs the ICP Agile courses and is a huge section of Agile. If you're familiar with Agile, you traditionally know who she is. But she recently released a book as well that really breaks it down in a simple format where you can sort of, like, it's a plate, right? It's a buffet. You get to pick and choose what you want to use. So I know within our own team, and this is largely based on when you were here, we chose a lot of Scrum ceremonies, which is what they call them. They're called Scrum ceremonies, and they're essentially different styles of meetings that you have throughout what's called a sprint, and that's within Scrum as well. A sprint means a lot of things to different people, just really quick. So that can range from like 2 weeks to a month for different agencies, and working with other agencies, even within my Storybrand courses, a lot of people use them, but in very different ways than we did. So we do our Scrum ceremonies and then a visual Kanban board, which a lot of people know Kanban because they've started messing around in Trello, and Trello's huge in project management. Some people, even outside of their own organization's project management, have individual Trello boards for themselves, but it's very much about that visual workflow. So we lean really heavily on those two things. The Scrum ceremonies to keep us into our process, ensure that we're hitting our targets, that we're also like making room for continuous improvement and growth. And so there's retrospective aspects to that as well. And then we move over to the Kanban, which is really about that visual workflow, which is where you can be more collaborative in those spaces because you see everything that's happening, so you know when you can jump in.
Right. And I think the other important part of that too is with those meeting ceremonies. I mean, we're both familiar with the marketing space and how a 30-minute conversation can trail off into like an hour conversation. And it's a lot of wasted time and a lot of missed opportunities to just get stuff done. So with these meeting ceremonies that you talked about, it really, helps everybody within that meeting have the time that they need to get their point across. It increases time management and organization, and you just go through what is the priority for either that week, that month, that quarter, whatever, and that's what you focus on. So it's a big thing to just hone in on what your focus is and your priority is, so you just get the stuff that needs to get done. So a couple other things that you guys are working on, and I know that you personally went through this course, and I'm dying to hear all about it because as a storyteller, I like things that have to deal with Storybrand and getting your story out there and touching your audience's emotions. And you just started it or finished it. I'm not quite sure.
Finished.
You finished it. Awesome. And it's this whole idea behind Storybrand Framework. Can you tell us a little more about that and why that was so important for MakingChips to have you go through that course?
Absolutely. So if you have ever listened to the MakingChips podcast, real plug that right now we're the number one manufacturing podcast, which I'm so proud of them for. But you are not unaware that we are huge Donald Miller fans. We really love what he does. So when we talk about Storybrand, we're talking about a framework that was originally created by Donald Miller. The idea behind it, which he says all the time, is it's always better to be clear than it is to be clever. And so it's essentially messaging and marketing framework that really is almost in a plug and play style, because it asks people the right questions to drag the right responses and helps you discern all of your information into ways that make sense for your end user. We're working with a client right now where we're going through that Storybrand process. Like I said, I did get certified. I'm a Storybrand certified guide. So we're walking him through that right now. And I remember the call we left learning about his business. His Equity Machine Works, his name is Justin Sherman. Please check him out. He's going to be launching his website with us within the next few weeks. Absolutely amazing. He's focusing on diversity and inclusion practices within manufacturing. But I remember leaving that meeting and the partners were like, I still don't get what he does. And I was like, I think I do, but I think we need to pull the right questions to get to that final stage. And we just finished up finalizing his actual Storybrand brand script is what we call them, but it's essentially your one plays explainer, where if someone walked up to you and said, what do you do for a living? You're not going to say, I make chips, right? But if you come across it and it's like, hey, you know how manufacturers have a really hard time understanding marketers, and it's vice versa. We don't speak each other's language. We work with tenured manufacturers within the industry through MakingChips to create marketing programs that help manufacturers reach their goals. And so it's a completely different conversation than I'm an agency director at MakingChips, right? And it's those sort of things. I remember sending out the Storybrand after it was revised and asking people who did not know who Equity Machine Works was, what do you think they do? And they all came back with the right answer. And it was just such a fulfilling feeling. But it really is about clarifying your message at the end of the day. I wish I had time to go through all of this. Megan and I could probably talk about putting together an event to actually help you guys go through the scripts yourselves. I'd be so happy to do that. But if I could take away one thing from Storybrand that I just want to share to everyone, it is that you are not the hero, you're the guide. And I know that's a really hard conversation to have, but when you write copy, that's what you need to start establishing yourself as. You are the guide that's leading your client to become the hero. You are not the hero that's providing someone with the solution.
I just had that same conversation with a client of mine that I am doing some copywriting for. And I was really, really proud of them because they actually shared their brand script with me. And it was set up just like that, where they set their company up as the guide to help their consumers be the hero for their employees. And it was just, I was like, you must have read this book. And he actually did read Don Miller's content. So that's where he got all that information from. And I was just like, this is so amazing.
I will throw in this plug real quick. So if you want to pick up one thing to dip your toes into, it's Business Made Simple. It is at any scale, but it sort of talks about Storybrand a little bit, but you can also get a look into Don Miller's head and sort of go through those questions with yourself, because a lot of Storybrand is really just introspection. And so that process can be difficult to people. And I think that ultimately that's why a lot of people hire a guide, whether they're good at content writing or not. It comes down to, you know, they want to be able to say things in a simpler way that connects with people in the right way that drives them to the correct call to actions. Because like we said in the beginning, clear is always better than clarity. Clear is always better than clever, and there's nothing better than clarity in these situations.
So with that course that you took, how long did that take you to get certified? Just in case someone might be thinking about doing it.
So if you're thinking about doing it, I will totally send you all the information. It is a larger upfront investment. I'll be very clear about that. It's $10,000 to become certified. But you can do that through Storybrand or clarifyyourmessage.com. And it is a full 3-day event. So you're going to need to be there. You additionally have a 90-day onboarding that they walk you through. It's a really great experience. However, if you go into that and think, maybe I don't want to be a guide, but I want to work with a guide, clarifyyourmessage.com can also connect you with a guide that can help you create a brand script, but also give you some free resources to poke around into as well.
That's great. So then let's dive into some of the content that MakingChips focuses on for some of its manufacturing clients. So as a copywriter, I know that most manufacturers out there are looking for really good content to help tell their story so that they can target the right audiences. Now, content is changing all the time on what type of content people want to consume and digest. And the last interview that I did with Nicole Wolters from HM Manufacturing, TikTok came up, and she's really, really good at updating her social media for HM Manufacturing. She's on that every single day. She hired a couple millennials. I think she said she's hired some 16-year-olds too, which is awesome because that's the age range of my daughter, and she's amazing on TikTok. I still have no idea how to handle that application at all. But, you know, one of the things are these small bits of video that show, you know, a larger story. And TikTok is great for that. But MakingChips is doing something with rendering. So can you get into more about some of the animations that you're doing? And I know that you had some things that you wanted to share on screen. So just yell at me when you're ready to share those, and I'll pull them up.
I'll just bring it up now. So when I talk about, so obviously our rendering and everything like that is a huge part of our content marketing right now, especially within clients. So I'm just going to sort of let this play as I talk. But while we do well on social channels, we're seeing specifically with our clients that renders are performing really well with social, but also as a sales tool. So one of the things that everyone, as soon as COVID happened, sort of said was like, okay, I need to invest in internet and content marketing now. It's not a choice, which was 100% true. But they weren't quite sure how to do that and in what capacity. And so they sort of threw things at the wall just to see what was happening. One of those things was definitely case studies, because everyone wants to talk about the projects that they've already done. However, when we went in and did case study photos and things like that, most of them were taken from the shop floor. They weren't super clean. They you know, didn't have everything squared away. And it's really hard to tell where the product featured was. And we even see that with some videography projects as well that we've done, that sometimes the testimonial part is going to perform better on videography than maybe just the case study was, or even just a feature call out with it. So Crystal and Ian, they're both on our team, absolutely amazing. They have been working within animation and renderings for a couple of years now. And so we've sort of found this way where you pay for the model build out, and then they're able to make it really modular so that in every use cases you can sort of see now, you can really give the breakdown of all of those. You can add in your call outs, and it can still be a storytelling video through those features, but it's definitely more feature based. And because you're able to do them at a large scale, you can condense them as you need to. So the video that you're seeing now, I say we probably have, you know, an additional like 15 stills that we have, you know, pulled for, whether that be the catalog or, you know, that be the, you know, general website. We also have some GIFs that we pulled from those. And so we've found that in general, animations are not only really great because they help sales teams sell, and sales teams generally react very excited about these, versus testimony and general call out features are less likely to share on their own. But most of the social traction we've seen there is actually sales members doing reach out with those versus a testimonial video. Whereas testimony videos on your company pages will probably perform okay. But on top of that, like I said, you can reuse this. So in a couple months down the road, when you did something new for that exact same tombstone, but the vices got switched out in a cool, different way, you can show that via renders, and we can really break it down for people. And the content is able to be reused so well that it has really been super helpful for us to both maintain and grow engagement.
And the thing too with renders that I find is, as you saw in that video, is it really got into the internal structure of the product as well too. And there's so many products out there that are large on the outside, but then there's so many smaller components on the inside that normal, like on a typical day, people wouldn't realize that. Like I work for a photochemical etching company right now, PhotoFab in Chicago, and they make really thin, small metal parts that go into medical and automotive. And half of the stuff that I'm seeing them etching, I'm like, I didn't even know this existed, because you can't see it when you're just looking at the larger product. So I think animations are really good to just show the overall picture, and you can add call outs to it. You can add text to it. And Ian and Crystal are doing a really good job. And just so everybody knows, that 2-minute video probably has more than 40 hours of work in it, because you have to get the files and you have to get the materials, you have to do the editing, you have to do the rendering, and then you have to preview it. And if something's just slightly off, you basically have to start over in some aspects. And it's a long process. So very much worth the investment that it is. And I think
but it's
more
timely for sure.
Yeah.
One thing behind that too, though, is that even working with other animation studios, and we've done this even as Making Chips, that disconnect between how your product work and what it does versus animations is really hard for people to see. So if they're pulling all your pieces in together, it's maybe a little bit easier. But right now, we're working on some for a filtration system. We're also working with an OEM dealer and a machine tool company. We're doing a Herco build right now. And if you don't understand what a Herco machine does or what that mobile filtration system is going to do, it's going to be really hard to animate it correctly. So it's the benefit of sort of working with people like Crystal, which I have the blessing to do, is she not only does these things and these beautiful animations, but she also has such an in-depth knowledge of manufacturing that really gives her an edge that it's hard for me to see in almost anyone else in the industry right now.
Yeah, you really need to understand the products that you're working with and have a basic knowledge of what they do to be able to create these things as well. And I think you brought up another good point too with regular videography and regular photography. There's some environments where you just can't get to in manufacturing. You can't with the camera. If you try to put a camera in something that's high heat, high temperature, you're going to mess up your camera. I think it's happened to Ian a couple of times when I worked with you guys. I think he went into an environment and it messed up his screen or something. But
it can totally mess up your configuration systems. And it can also not be the footage you ultimately want. Like I said, filtration systems are a great example because you guys know how those works, that you're not going to be able to show the insides via videography or even if you found a built-in way, which let me tell you, it's very costly to do that and run cameras and CNC machines like you see sometimes. Please note that those are very high budget, beautiful projects, and I love them. But it doesn't allow you to move the way you need to. You know, there's limitations to that, as there is with everything. You know, and animations and renders are in such an introductory space right now. We're seeing them become more prevalent, and we're going to continue to see them become more prevalent because who are the people using them? Google and Apple. Who drives most of what we do? That comes back to lean and agile as well. Those things come back. It's the heavy hitters within your industry and capitalism in general that are going to guide your practices and your content marketing because they are the leaders in those space. So I don't think you're going to see rendering or animation die off anytime soon. I think you're going to see it boom. And I think you're going to see it becoming a lot more cost effective as these the people behind the programs see how large this is growing and how I know Keyshot we just upgraded, and Crystal is now able to do more than ever. She's also started touching some fluids. The other day, this woman, okay, she is so impressive. This woman I was like, hey, I've got a challenging one. We're going to need some bristle brushes. We're going to need a self-cleaning device. And she found a way to modify like general grass movement into bristles. And like, she's able to like completely change materials now. And they do the correct things because she has programs that allow her to be creative in those ways that I wouldn't even think of. If I said a bristle brush, I would think of a million parts I need to move. And she said, what already has that? How can I modify it? How can I add rigid, some rigid texture to it? And that's the kind of stuff she does. But the programs allow you to do that more as they grow themselves.
That's awesome. You guys you definitely need to figure out liquids and gases more, because I know I came to you asking, hey, can you figure this out? Because we want to show this. And she's like, we don't know how to do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You cap out at certain points for sure. And she works with some of the people that actually are the largest in the industry within Keyshot, and she has connections to them. And even they're like blown away by what she's able to do within the programs that she has. So we learn, and we always do. And like I said, Crystal and Ian both amaze me every week with the new things that they come up with and the cool ways that they think of to do something different.
It's nice to hear how far she's come too, because I remember when she first started learning all of that stuff, and now it's just, I mean, we saw it right there. That was a good example of how her skills have, improved within the last year, and she's still learning and she's still improving. And the thing with animations too is you can use them on your website, you can use them on your YouTube channel, you can use them on your social media channels. You can upload the files to your sales team's iPads or their phones, and they can pull it up that way. And it's a really good way to like show the inner workings of a component or part. So like you said, it's generally a best friend for your sales team, because what better way to show, hey, this is how this works, because I'm definitely going to buy something if I can see all the inner workings of it versus just a regular 2D photo.
It tends to hit home and be a little bit more easier to read, especially for engineers, within sales calls, just because I hate to call them fluff videos, but to a certain extent, if it's all about your company overview and then this product, or if it's just your product just sitting there and you have call outs on top, they zoom out.
Yeah.
But especially if they have to hear about your company while doing it, because normally they want to know what you do before they care even about who your company is.
Yeah.
So.
And with that video right there, it was just really cool. And it just sucked me in, and I'm like, ooh, what's that? What's that? What is that going on there? So it helps develop questions too from the customer sides, because it's providing that story, but not the full story. So that way people are going to actually contact you and say, hey, I saw this. Can you tell me more about it? So it's a really good starter conversational piece as well too. So,
and we have people from sister companies that share the sister companies' animations, and they're like, "Do you have any of your products? Like, how can I get one of these made?" Like, we some of the partners that one of our loving clients, Advanced Machine and Engineer, works with, they have their own partners for their work holding systems, and they even reached out and they were like, so what are you doing here? And that's the kind of stuff that just, lights you on fire, right? Like that not only is this hitting home with the industry, but the industry wants to adapt with it.
That's really cool. So Jessica, I want to thank you for coming on today. One of the many reasons I started Mavens of Manufacturing is to address not only the skills gap, but the gender gap as well too. And there's always that question, of why women aren't entering the manufacturing field. And there a couple of times I've heard, well, they don't know about the many opportunities. And I think there's this misconception of what the manufacturing sector entails in terms of career opportunities and career pathways. So when I was going through high school, it wasn't something that I was thinking about, because my dad worked in a machine shop and it was that dirty, dark, dull environment that I was just like, I don't really want to do this. Yeah, that's fun. Like, I don't mind getting dirty, but that's not something that I want to do my entire life. And then when I got into writing, I was really shocked at how much more involved I got into manufacturing. And then with the whole marketing aspect. So I really wanted to bring you on here specifically for that too, because within manufacturing, you need good marketers to tell that story, and you need good content to share that story. And I think you guys at MakingChips are doing a great job for your clients doing that, especially with the animations. So one of the questions I have for you, at your time with MakingChips, I know you've gotten more involved with the industry and have talked to a lot of different clients. What have you heard as some of the reasons why women don't get involved with manufacturing?
Yeah, so I hear quite a few. A lot of it is a branding misconception within the industry, no doubt. A lot of people mistake manufacturing for the old school of what it once was. We also have to remember that for people within my age range and a lot of yours, that I would argue between 25 and 40, even for women right now, that when we were growing up, manufacturing became a dying, scary space, right? Because that's what we were told. We were told every day that is not stable, that is not going to get you through it, that is very risky, when the opposite could really be said. But it's a complex question, because I think a lot of it are barriers to entry. I know women who excel in machine shops. I know women who have quit from sexual harassment, but a lot of that comes from, the culture of the company and manufacturing itself starting to adjust and become more inclusive. But like I said, I don't think that happens just from the ground floor and on a company by company basis. I think that's a larger conversation that we're all having amongst ourselves and what it means to have a successful career. And I think that's, as much as it's what keeps women away from manufacturing, what brings women to manufacturing. In my life, I have been lucky to be surrounded by nothing but amazing women, and the manufacturing space is no different. It's sort of one of those, I swear I dipped my toe and I walked into the ocean with you guys. And that's really how the women of manufacturing are. And I think we'll see a trend of women entering because of women like you, Megan, women that are willing to talk about manufacturing in these abstract ways, and women who fight for work cultures for women, and explain how real we are in this space. So honestly, I believe as much as the problem is barriers to entry, and we have to solve them that way. I think it's women like you and women that I found in Rockford and in this space that have been nothing but wonderful and welcoming to me. And it even in the tech space, I didn't experience anything like this. So I appreciate you and everything you do in the communities that you get involved with. It makes a difference.
Thank you so much. Well, throughout our conversation today, what question do you feel I missed asking you that you think is important that you answer?
Oh, this is easy. Okay. So what you missed asking me is why I loved working with Megan Zimba. And I would love to talk about this. Megan is one of the most passionate, creative, smart, fiery women that I have ever met. If you're watching her here, you're going to be watching her on a bigger stage in the next 2 years. My answer is no less the question that I wanted you to ask me, and more that I just wanted to remind your audience that you are listening to someone who knows her shit and does it very well, and nothing but bigger and better things are coming into her life. So don't be surprised. I would not be surprised if 3 years from now I saw you on the IMTS stage right next to us.
Oh, thanks, Jessica. I swear to God, I did not pay you to do that.
You didn't at all, but I couldn't help myself.
Thank you so much. Well, Jessica, again, I appreciate everything that you guys are doing at MakingChips. I look forward to seeing what else you guys come up with. You guys have a great team, a fun team there. I do miss working with every single one of you because you're innovative. You aren't afraid of challenges. You find solutions to things that most people would give up on, and you just keep going and moving forward. And I think you're a very good asset for manufacturers who are looking for marketing help and looking for how to tell their stories to their customers. So thank you so much for joining us today. If people want more information about MakingChips or more information about you, where should they go?
So you can go MakingChips.com for MakingChips. Please listen to our podcast. It is amazing. And then you are always free to email me at jessica@makingchips.com. I'm going to send Megan over some assets over here. Since we talked about Agile and Storybrand, I want to give you guys small things that you guys can try and implement during those processes so that it doesn't feel overwhelming and you can dip your toes before you make that big jump like we did. A reminder that MakingChips, even though you are not officially on our team, MakingChips is the metalworking nation, and you are always a part of my team and in my corner, and for that I am so grateful.
Thank you. So with those small things that you're offering too, I'll make sure to include those on the Mavens of Manufacturing website. So if people want to download those worksheets, they can definitely do that. And yeah, let's get some of those resources that you mentioned, and I'll make sure to share those out after this episode.
That sounds so great. I would love talking to you, Megan. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, guys. Well, this was another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. To all those that tuned in, thank you so much, and have a great weekend, guys. Bye.
Bye.
This has been another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. Subscribe for more, and make sure to tune in next time.